Hello everyone, new video here, an update on Gobekli Tepe, a site that is what I believe appears to be where Noah kept the animals during the period between when Jah told him about what he had to do and what Jah was going to do, and when the flood actually happened, a period of several decades at a minimum. At least according to my analysis of those texts, which you can read in my text readings playlist on the CW Jah YouTube channel. Go to the text reading for whatever section of the Bible and verse you want to get my opinion about. In this case, the flood and what Noah did before and leading up to the flood, including gathering the animals that Jah commanded him to gather. He would not only have had to gather them, but preserve alive several generations of every species, more or less for some than others. But he didn't just go out and gather the specific pairs and numbers that Jah commanded him, and that was it. He would have had to have made sure that's what he brought on the ark. And in order to do that, he would have had to have gathered and maintained those animals for several decades. And that's about how long it would have taken him to gather everything that would have been necessary in order to preserve the species from which the rest of the animals then came forth. And it's interesting that even evolutionists, unintelligent evolutionists, in other words, evolution that is not due to any intelligence, just random, accidental things that happen that with so much time and so much to work with from some unknown source that must be eternal in some sense, unless evolutionists are going to tell us where all that came from. Either way, we believe everything came from life, and life is eternal, and that eternal life is what we call God. That aside, when it comes to Gobekli Tepe and the story of the flood, critics often deride the historicity of that account, even though it's shared among numerous, if not every ancient civilization for which we have records of events at that time. So, nevertheless, that and sunken cities all over the earth, things I've talked about before, I have numerous videos on, again, including Gobekli Tepe. I'll just show you real briefly. One recent video I did that is a clip from another earlier video about Gobekli Tepe. It's right here. I uploaded it about a year ago. Gobekli Tepe is not 10,000 plus years old. It's where Noah kept the ark animals. Of course, this is my belief. I can't prove it absolutely, but I'm not aware of any other credible theory about what Gobekli Tepe could be that is based on an actual event in history from that location. It's only a couple hundred miles, several hundred miles from where the ark is said to have landed. Gobekli Tepe was completely buried in sand. After erecting these massive stone monuments, they believe humans buried it in sand. I believe that it was buried by the flood, which moved the sand. That aside, I believe that the images at Gobekli Tepe, as I talked about in this video and in other videos, show all of the creatures that Noah was commanded to bring onto the ark, from reptiles to birds to land animals of different types, everything but sea creatures, which wouldn't have been necessary. And regardless of what types of creatures existed at that time, the fact is that sea creatures can exist in fresh and salt water, and salt water and fresh water can exist side by side, as we see in cenotes and in different parts of the world where oceans are separated, or bodies of water are separated based on their composition. The idea that the floodwaters couldn't have maintained a composition that, like the way bull sharks are able to adapt to fresh water, allows saltwater creatures to continued to live during the period of the flood is, of course, ridiculous and not based on actual science. Again, I just cited bull sharks and certain phenomena in the oceans and seas and other places, like, again, cenotes, where you have fresh and salt water side by side. The idea that God couldn't maintain that same division so that the creatures he desired could survive is ridiculous, right? Again, that's just because those who don't believe in God assume that intelligence isn't possible. And yet, if it is, that's most certainly possible. It actually happens unintelligently in their view, based on those examples I just gave. So we don't need to consider the sea creatures, and the account in the Bible does not do that, I believe, for that reason. Now, recently, there has been another finding that I believe shows or supports my theory. That is, as far as I'm aware, I should say, the only credible theory that's based on an actual event from that location in sources throughout history, different civilizations and cultures from that time, the period of the flood. Okay, so the location, the people, the things they were told to do, all fits with Gobekli Tepe. The different types of creatures, their states of reproduction, right? We've got birds going through stages of reproduction from eggs to full adults. We've got separation of creatures, and that leads to the most recent finding. Consider this with me. Let me bring up this article from archaeology, archaeology.org. Wild boar carving uncovered at Turkey's Gobekli Tepe. Now, I've seen boar images on pillars at Gobekli Tepe, and you'll see them as well. You can see them in the video I just showed you a clip from, that I talk about things where I talk about images of the creatures from Gobekli Tepe. But this new wild boar has something else that I don't think anyone is understanding completely. And I think there's even a misinterpretation of some of the carved imagery. So this video will not only serve as a furtherance of my theory that Gobekli Tepe is a suitable place based on what we're seeing as its design, and the intention behind those who carved the creatures was to maintain these different species, was to provide in these different types of very interesting circular pits. I'll show you an image in a moment. And you can see in the other videos I've done, or just look up Gobekli Tepe images, right? See all kinds of stuff. Now, there's different theories. I don't believe it's 10,000 years old. I believe they're basing that date and other dates on their dating of sediments surrounding the carved stone. Tree, ash, and things like that could be from trees, far older than the time when those things were carved and erected, right? Nothing really fits with evolutionist timeline in terms of the way they see the progression of humanity and the actual indicators of humanity. Everything fits time-wise, from languages to the flood to different nations with what the Bible describes. We don't have languages going back 10,000, 15,000. We don't even have languages going back farther than 5,000, if that. And certainly not much further than that. And yet they want us to believe that people were carving and erecting stones at Gobekli Tepe in this manner 10,000 BCE, 12,000 years ago. The evidence doesn't support that. Only this misdating based on, how much sediment and composition material from all kinds of different trees and plants and animals and anything on the earth, right? Especially if the flood is what buried Gobekli Tepe. Something buried it. So they're getting all this dirt and sand from somewhere and bringing it to Gobekli Tepe to bury it, huh? No, that makes no sense whatsoever. A flood doing that's recorded throughout ancient civilizations makes perfect sense. It also explains, I believe, places like the Sphinx in Egypt. That's a separate video. Back to Gobekli Tepe. New finding: wild boar carving uncovered at Turkey's Gobekli Tepe. October 5th, 2023, from the Archaeological Institute of America. This real brief paragraph, and then we're going to go to the related article. Şanlıurfa, Turkey, according to a Hürriyet Daily News report, a life-sized limestone carving of a male boar has been uncovered at the 12,000-year-old site of Gobekli Tepe, which is located in the southeastern Anatolia. Again, just several hundred miles, a few hundred miles from Mount Ararat. The 4-foot-tall carving, painted with red, white, and black pigments, was found inside a large structure at the site, known as Structure D. It is noteworthy that, as in all animals found here before, it is in an attack position, and its aggression is emphasized with its teeth, said archaeologists of Turkey's Cultural and Tourism Ministry. The pigment survives in the tongue and hair of the sculpture, he added. For more on Gobekli Tepe, go to the here. Okay, so now here's an article from Sci News. I'll put links to these in my video, in my prior videos on Gobekli Tepe below. 11,000-year-old painted statue of wild boar unearthed at Gobekli Tepe. Remember, I told you the dates they give for this, which I don't believe are correct. They're based on things that wouldn't be proof of what they claim. But actual historical records of events that are consistent with these types of structures, I believe that's better evidence than dating sediments from, you know how much type of sediment material is in those compressed areas of Gobekli Tepe that they're digging up. Talks here about how they unearthed the wild boar statue. Here it is right here. I'm gonna bring up an image in a minute that gives you more detail. Okay, this is the key thing here. I believe this right here further supports my theory. Gobekli Tepe was used either by Noah or someone else, and Noah's the only figure from history that I can identify credibly as being the one. Again, I'm open to other suggestions, but no one's giving me any. Okay, this all fits with the events of the Bible ascribed to Noah and what he did before the flood. Does it absolutely prove it? No. It's certainly not. I mean, it is consistent with it and supports it. I don't see how you could argue this isn't support for events described in the Bible pertaining to Noah. Whether it is or isn't, we can't prove that, but we can't prove almost anything from ancient history. We go based on probability and what makes sense in light of the aggregate of evidence. So we'll get to that more in a moment, right? There's something down here. It's very important on this slab that the wild boar burying its teeth is on. Look above it too. A little hole there. It's kind of like some serpent figures too around that hole. Some serpent figures down here. What's going on there? Right, so it talks about the find right here. Bring that a little bigger. You guys can read it too. Right, okay, well, let's just look at it real quickly. Look at it. There, look at the hole above the boar. And you've got these snakes. Looks to me like you've got several snakes going from right to left. And you've got another snake coming out of this cylinder. Now, in the article that I just showed you, they call that an H. And I think they call this a crescent. But I don't think so. I think this is a snake head coming out of this cylinder. And this cylinder right here is that hole right there. Now, why are they coming out of that hole? Well, look at the snake head coming out of the hole. It's going back toward the other snakes, right? The other snakes are coming toward the hole. The other snake's coming back out at them. Why is that happening? Because it's afraid of the boar. The boars were used to not only protect the other animals from the snakes as they had to maintain them, right? They're part of the crawling creatures and creeping things that had to be gathered. So the reptiles. So to do that, to protect the other creatures from all these snakes they'd have around, they had the boar. And it also helped control the snake population so that the snakes could be contained. I believe the snakes were on the other side of that hole right here. And if they came through that hole, the boars would get them. And so they were putting the snakes in the containment area behind this hole. And to keep, and in order to be able to feed the snakes, put them in there and give them whatever they needed, right? They didn't do this from the ground up. Otherwise, there'd be apparently the best way to do this was they could keep the boar in this room and they could keep the snakes up here. And then when the snakes got too big of a population for this containment area behind this hole, they would come through the hole and the boars would get them. And that's why you see the snake running back through the hole, like telling the other snakes, no, don't go in there, to keep them alive so they don't all get eaten, because the boars will eat all the snakes. All right, let me show you now. This is incredible, I know. Let me bring you up, though, back to that article, right? So, that same article. There's that image. I believe this is the boar room. I believe the snakes are in that room. That's why you have those snakes kind of all around that hole. And you have the snakes right here, the image showing that the snakes will run back into the hole because of the boar. And so this is where they were to put the boar, and that's where they were to put the snakes. All right, then the article goes on to talk about things, talks about the features of the site, how they believe it was built between 9600 and 8200 BCE. I believe it is pre-flood, so probably around 5000 to 4000 BCE. Maybe to 3500 as well. Again, things aren't as... Humans haven't been around as long as people think based on the clear indicators of humanity. At the end, it says, earlier this year, archaeologists from Turkey Ministry, right here, Culture of Tourism, were surprised to discover a painted statue during excavations. The Neolithic statue is made of limestone and depicts a wild boar. A life-size wild boar statue was found in the D structure of Gobekli Tepe, the archaeologist explained. Red, white, and black pigment residues can be seen on its surface, making it the first known painted statue from the Neolithic period. Now, here's where I believe they make a mistake. The statue was found on a bench with decorations, thought to be an H-shaped symbol, a crescent, 2 snakes, and 3 human faces or masks. Okay, I don't believe there are human masks or faces, and I don't believe there's an H, and I don't believe there's a crescent. If this is the crescent they're talking about, I think they went in order. H, crescent, snake, and then I guess they're coming up with a human face or 2. I think this is all snakes. You can only make out 1 or 2 clearly. I mean, here's the body of what looks like a third. Head would go right here, but it's kind of missing. Right here's the first snake, the one in the middle. Then right behind it, looks like there's a separation, you see? And then behind it, there's another one. See, they said there was only 2 snakes. And then this probably another snake right here. Part of this is damaged though. Because look at this, the far left. See how it's rounded, more slab? You can see the crack in the middle, right? The weight, the water of the flood, right? This part's broken off over here on the right. But the parts from the middle right to the middle are pretty clear. And this thing they're calling a crescent next to the alleged H, that looks like a snake. I don't see why they think that's a crescent or why they think that's an H, right? I mean, no. That's this right here. That's a snake coming out of a hole. There's a hole on one side in a tube they made and a hole on the other side. This far left thing down here on the slab. That's, to me, what they're showing what happens with this hole. Snakes will come out of this hole and snakes go in that hole. And the boars keep them in the population control they need to be. It's incredible. So I think they're wrong here. They've got this wrong, everybody. I don't see how they could think that's an H based on what we just saw, right? I mean, where are they getting this H? What, this is a crescent? Doesn't even look like a crescent. It looks like a mouth. It's facing these snakes coming out or in, and it's saying, no, go back in. Right? The boars are in there. And if you go in there, the boars will eat you. Right here, look. Just search, will a wild boar eat snakes? Almost every article is going to make it clear, yes, they do. The ones that know what they're talking about. And even the ones that say no and that they're omnivores, will go on to state they will eat snakes if they have to, but they actually eat them pretty quickly. You can see a video. This right here is a video. I won't play it now for copyright issues, but you can watch it. Just type that in. Will a wild boar eat snakes? Wild or feral pigs are resilient to the venom of many snakes, including rattlesnakes, and they will harass and even kill and eat venomous snakes, such as the western diamondback rattlesnake in this video. And they'll eat pythons. There's another video of wild boars tearing apart a python that ate a tiny boar or pig. So if you click this video right here that I watched earlier, it will give you a video of two wild pigs and a rattlesnake. And the wild pigs, even the young one, even the, can't be more than a few years old, they both keep coming up to it. And the rattlesnake keeps clearly bite him. It slows it down and shows the mouth open and just snag him. But they keep coming. It doesn't do anything to him at all. Never. They 4 times they showed it got each one of them and it didn't bother them at all. They just kept coming back. So that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? There's other things you can read here. This one here I read, Orlando Sentinel, rattlesnakes met their match in wild hogs. Let's check it out. Just real briefly. Talks about the problem they had in Seminole County and a place called Rattlesnake Lake. And it says, they were able to get the population of the snakes under control because of the hogs. Don't blame the railroads and winter tourists. Blame or the developers who often get accused of paving over wildlife. It was the hogs. That's right, hogs, says Bill Broussard, a Melbourne ophthalmologist who spends half his week tending to his cattle. Broussard traps and butchers wild hogs that wander on his 32-acre wilderness. When he spots a diamondback rattlesnake, he just tips his black hat and moves on at a slightly quicker pace. Wild hogs and rattlers are natural enemies, and the hogs have pretty much eaten their fill of Florida rattlesnakes. So they were brought in by the Spanish to deal with the rattlesnakes. Everybody, that image from Gobekli Tepe showing that hog with its ferocious teeth in attack position, like the article stated, with a hole with snakes drawn around it, and then on a slab depicting that same hole, both ends of it, and a snake coming back into the hole where the other snakes are, to me is incredible. I believe that shows clearly they knew exactly what they were doing at Gobekli Tepe. And what they were doing was putting wild boar that are naturally resistant to venom of snakes and that will eat venomous snakes. They were putting the boar in that location, and then behind the boar, above them, through that hole, they were putting the snakes. And the snakes, if they got too numerous and tried to get out and maybe hurt the other animals, the boar would eat them. Incredible. They knew what they were doing. They were preserving the animals they were supposed to preserve, and they knew exactly how to preserve them because they were made in God's image, and God was with them. And the things we see at Gobekli Tepe, the understanding that they had and showed in gathering, containing, and managing the reproduction of species with venomous creatures in a way that shows clear recognition of how it could and should be done without any other reason for doing so than that told to us in the Bible and in numerous other ancient civilizations and records about events before the flood.